Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about White Magneto and all of his new buffed abilities. So just an hour ago or so we saw some CCP videos getting released about White Magneto buff, full details, all of his abilities, and also kind of like explanation on how he is centered more around helping other metal or hero champions. And with that, we're going to start with the persistent charge. So Magneto begins each quest with 6 persistent charges. Defeating an opponent grants 1 persistent charge back. If they're metal, you gain 2 persistent charges instead. Landing hits or being struck grants 5% chance per persistent charge to gain a 10-second prowess buff, granting 10% special attack damage, max stack 7. So, the prowess mechanic is still present, but it's going to work significantly differently. It's only going to also going to be tied in with persistent charges. And the first thing that you can take away here is if you actually plan to use Magneto, you will want to kind of like keep as many persistent charges as possible upon entering the fight. Now, when you enter the fight, in order to activate your pre-fight ability, you need to use you need to use 2 of your persistent charges. So realistically, seeing the persistent charges are capped at max, at any given time, the highest amount of persistent charges you can get is basically 10 if you want to use your pre-fight ability, which you do pretty much always. So 8 persistent charges, and that also means 40% chance per persistent charge, 40% chance to gain this 10-second prowess buff. Now the pre-fight ability is quite interesting, and it's definitely beneficial not just for White Magneto. And it reads as follows. Magneto can spend 2 persistent charges in the pre-fight screen to place a guidance effect on the fight, which lasts until the defender is defeated. The effects don't stack and can be used by allies. Attackers in the fight gain 15% attack rating, so that's neat, nice, but the bigger thing is that metal and hero attackers trigger passive stun effects with the parry mastery instead of debuffs, which gain half second duration. And now that is super important, because obviously we have all of these shrug off abilities that are becoming more and more popular, like, I don't know, Mole-Man, like Agent Venom, Tenacity nodes, and many others like that. Additionally, if it works how it should, then you should also be able to parry stun in debuff immune matchups. Due to the changes with the passive stun interaction with stun immunity, it will not work definitely there, but it should work in full-on debuff immune matchups, which quite frequently we can see many bosses with debuff immunity, and it has always been one of those nodes that is extremely tricky to fight off against. And it's been one of those nodes that's ever so present in the content. So it should be extremely useful considering the new trends where a lot of abilities kind of like want to prevent you from stunning opponents or discourage you from stunning opponents, and this would be quite effective way how to deal with them. Additionally, the fact that you can use this pre-fight ability 3 times just by having Magneto on your team without having to actually use Magneto will definitely, in my opinion, make sure that White Magneto will occasionally be seen in some of the Alliance war teams as a support character, because attack increase, passive parry stun, definitely sounds that it could be used here and there, and also in some of the Act 6 and Act 7 content for sure as well. And now let's move on to heavy attacks. Heavy attacks have 100% chance to gain prowess buff lasting 30 seconds. And 35% special attack damage. So that is quite significant. Prowess max at 3 stacks, and it doesn't matter. There is a max limit. And White Magneto, you're going to notice that you do not get nearly as many additional abilities once you're fighting metal champions, and that's kind of like tied in with his character idea of being more of a support champion, I suppose. But yeah, when Red Magneto abilities got released and we saw that he gets like bonuses absolutely everywhere against metal characters. White Magneto, not so much. Obviously he still has the magnetism and all sorts of stuff like that, but you will not get nowhere near as many kind of like buffs during the fight. Therefore also with White Magneto, it's much less important whether you're fighting metal champions or not. He will perform pretty much the same. Okay, let's move on. Special attacks. All special attacks gain different abilities and buffs based on how many promises you have. If you have 1 promise, you have increased 50% ability accuracy. 3 promise, buff and debuff duration 50%. 6 promise, buff and debuff potency. And 9 prowess attack grants opponents 80% less power. So that's again a neat, definitely a good thing that it starts with ability accuracy, because if you have at least 1 promise, you will have 100% chance to trigger all of your abilities on special attacks, because at default they're listed as 70%. And then increased duration and potency is always nice, as they will deal more damage, or armor break is going to be more noticeable. So 70% special attack 1, 70% chance to inflict armor break debuff, removing 1 armor up buff, and reducing armor rating by 1130 for 14 seconds. Now it's not the biggest armor up buff, but with increased potency, with increased duration, shouldn't be too bad. Right now I have special attack 2, 70% chance to inflict bleed debuff, causing 3000 direct damage over 6 seconds. If the opponent is metal, instead inflict a degeneration debuff. Chance to inflict additional bleed or degen buff if the opponent has an armor break debuff. So that's fairly straightforward. Bleed against non-metals, degen against metal champions, and you have 70% chance to inflict additional one if opponent has an armor break. Thus, your rotation with this champion is going to be kind of like quite obvious. You're going to want to drop special 1 and then special 2 later on. And from what I have seen, ideally you want to launch special 3 first and then go from 1 to 2. Anyways, special attack 3, 70% chance to gain cruelty buff, increasing critical damage by 400 for 40 seconds. While this cruelty buff is active, Magneto's existing prowess buffs remain paused. Now that cruelty buff, I don't know. 400 is not the biggest cruelty increase. Let's just stop at that. The main, obviously, idea behind this cruelty is that it lasts for 40 seconds plus with the pre-fights and whatever not, probably significantly longer. And whilst you have this cruelty buff active, your prowesses kind of like stick on longer and you're able to keep them on for higher. Also, thing to note is that these prowess buffs don't expire once you launch special attack. So in any matches where you're able to spam special attack, it's going to be seriously kind of like better than, for instance, Red Magneto, where your prowesses did expire. But still, those are the main set abilities, and now we have left this magnetism, which is again signature kind of like Magneto calling card. So metal opponents suffer indefinite magnetization passive, which is applied 1 second after the start of the fight, and does the following: 70% ability accuracy and minus 15% combat power rate. Incoming debuffs gain 25% duration, and Magneto gains 750 attack. So this is slightly different. The core ability remains the same, that opponents suffer 70% ability accuracy. And other than that, you reduce opponent's combat power rate, which is quite interesting, which I do like, which I think more champions should have. And then your debuffs get longer, and you have 750 increase in attack rating. Additionally, Magneto is fully bleed immune. He's not like 90% immune like Red Magneto is to bleed and shock. White Magneto has full-on bleed immunity, which I forgot to talk about. But in all honesty, I like Red Magneto's magnetism and his bleed and shock pseudo immunity is much better than White Magneto's, but hey, it's an immunity. Why would anybody ever complain about that? And now we have an signature ability. Magneto's bleed and armor break debuffs gain up to 80% duration based on how much bonus special damage you got from this promise. Caps out at 150%. Knocking out opponent grants an additional persistent charge. So there are two things that I would kind of like take away from this signature ability. Well, first and foremost, it's definitely super useful. And I also think if you want to use White Magneto, not for his support abilities, but for his own abilities, and actually go in and fight with White Magneto as a champion to kind of rely on, I think you pretty much have to get him awakened at least at a low sig, mainly due to that extra persistent charge, because it takes 2 persistent charges to activate the Prefight ability, but you only gain back 1 once you defeat the opponent, 2 if they're metal. And with the signature ability, you would gain back 2 persistent charges or 3 if they're metal. So you'd actually have like a net gain, and that is the way you could kind of like ramp him up better. Now, I'm sure he will still be able to be used without the Awakened ability, but I think increased debuff duration definitely is nice, but the main thing is that a ramp up would be much easier, much quicker with White Magneto. So if you want to use him as a support character, then the Awakened ability obviously matters not at all. So I'm personally kind of like on mixed feelings. Don't think I would want to rank up Magneto if he's unawakened, but obviously you can use him as a support character even unranked for 3 fights a quest. So it doesn't mean that he's a bad champion. It just means for me personally, if I were to invest Catalyst in this guy and actually bring him in fights, I definitely want him to be awakened at least at low sig. If not so much for that increased debuff duration, then definitely for that easier persistent charge ramp up. Alright, now signature abilities. And he's one of those champions who has a signature ability with himself. Now first, simply by having Magneto on your team, all hero champions gain 8% attack rating, and all metal champions gain 10% ability accuracy. If your champion is hero metal champion, then you gain both. And with persistent charges, 23% attack bonus. And that's quite significant. That's definitely useful, so he's gonna help a lot for many different champions. And the 10% ability accuracy increase is also quite important in my opinion, and will definitely help a lot of metal champions in a game who have kind of some reliance to RNG. And yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't think it's the most OP thing ever, but I think it's definitely useful and kind of like fits with the theme of the character. And then now we have synergy with Taskmaster, Cable, and X23, where Magneto gains indefinite prowess buff, granting 20% special attack damage, so that's kind of nice. Nothing kind of like groundbreaking, I suppose. Pretty much sure that Captain America Infinity War more or less has the same ability for all mutants, but yeah. So bleed and cruelty effects gain 35% debuff duration for X23. That's decent. Still not gonna change where X23 lies and what you can do. And Taskmaster exploit weakness attacks deal 40% more damage. That's kind of cool because you can exploit weakness quite a bit, especially if you get in like special 1 loop, which I have showcased on the channel. So I'll definitely play about that just for fun, just see what difference does it make. And here is a more interesting thing, because in one video that we were watched, obviously, Rise Against the Contest, we see 2 big question marks and nothing else is revealed. And then it says plus 5% attack rating during the fight, and Magneto's attachment atonement synergy gains 25% potency, which is cool. So the atonement synergy is the one that gives 8% attack rating and 10% ability accuracy. So with that synergy added, you would give 10% attack rating and 12.5% ability accuracy increase. So that's neat. But there is a more interesting story, and we're going to return to that because in here, obviously, we just see question marks and we can't deduce anything from it. Then he has redemption, and that is defeating villain champions grants 1 persistent charge plus 10% attack while fighting villains. That's nice. That's definitely helpful. The most helpful thing is not with Colossus. Colossus synergy, I think, is quite negligible. Nullify and stagger effects suffer 65% ability accuracy. It's kind of whatever. You will not use Colossus in fights where Nullify and Stagger is like a big factor. And then Guardian force field charges are gained 3.5 seconds faster. That's definitely huge for Guardian, and I think that will make Guardian much quicker, kind of like a ramp-up champion. And yeah, I really like it, because especially once you are using your level 1s, your force field charges expire, but with a shorter ramp-up time, kind of like you will be able to stack more of them easier and put up bigger numbers quicker. So yeah, I think this is a very, very important synergy for Guardian, Not to mention that Guardian is a metal and is a hero champion, so all of that stuff will kind of like add really well to boost up the guy. Right, but let's return to this Rise Against the Contest synergy. In the other video, which we saw on Legacy's channel, he was reading Magneto's ability from like pre-prepared text. Right, and that pre-prepared text, we first and foremost see that the first question mark is Professor X. Each fight 1 grants 2 persistent charges. So the synergy is fairly vague, but it does let us know that Professor X is definitely coming, which we knew, and it also lets us know that Professor X will have persistent charge mechanics. So that is something, but most importantly, even though they still have question marks next to the name, the synergy itself says Horseman gain plus 30% prowess potency. And if you type in Horseman Marvel in Google, there's only one name that comes up in association with Horseman, and that is Apocalypse. Currently, we have 2 Horsemen of Apocalypse in the game, which would be Sorcerer Supreme. No, wait. Yeah, I think Sorcerer Supreme and Storm Pyramid X. Quite sure those are Horsemen, and they both have access to prowess. Sorcerer Supreme needs synergy to access prowess, and Storm Pyramid X obviously has entire kit built around prowess buffs. And yeah, so it is quite evident, in my opinion, that at the very least, 100% we can deduce that it has something to do with Horseman of Apocalypse, but the nature of the synergy plus kind of like pairing of Professor X, I would say that it is definite that we will see Apocalypse come in the contest in the next month, and then quite shortly possibly another couple of Horsemen following that. So that is definitely interesting. I definitely do like that. And yeah, so overall, White Magneto. What do I think of White Magneto? I can't say I like him nearly as much as Red Magneto. I don't think he's gonna be half the damage dealer. I don't think he's gonna be bad champion. I think that White Magneto is much more in line of most of the champions released in 2020. He was like a new champion added to the contest. I'd say that he like fits in with the theme. There's nothing OP completely. There are some definite nice use, some interesting mechanics, and he seems balanced. From the gameplay that we saw, he still can potentially do some decent amounts of damage via his rotation to Special 3, 1, and 2. Takes about 75 hits to beat a Realm of Legends boss if you have Suicide Zone with a 6-star rank 2, or 100 something hits without them at a 6-star rank 2. So the damage output is not impressive by any means. It's not bad, but it's not like a damage powerhouse. And that alone kind of make him significantly less interesting for a rank up potential. But the pre-fight abilities and that synergy with himself definitely make him an interesting, valuable champion to have. Not necessarily ranked up. If I will rank up my 6-star Magneto, that will likely be if I end up using his pre-fight ability a lot. I will just kind of like want to rank him up because so I don't have to take in unranked champion with me. But for most part, I think obviously Red Magneto is going to be much more dominant champion. Now, I'm not going to say that White Magneto looked bad or looked awful or any of those things. He doesn't. But if you have a choice to make, then it's quite obvious. Because all of these abilities that I am most interested in, the rank and level doesn't really matter of this White Magneto. It's only the fact that he's there, he's on the team, you can access the synergies, you can access the pre-fight. And Red Magneto, on the other hand, is intriguing due to his own potential and his numbers and everything else. So for me, waiting the actual buffs to go live, the choice is quite clear. I do have both of these champions as 6 stars, and Red Magneto is going to rank 3. White Magneto for now is staying at rank 1. Happy I have him, because he's not available as a 5-star at the moment, I believe. So I'm happy I have the 6-star White Magneto, but I will not rush to put any catalysts into him. But yeah, that will pretty much do for today's video. Let me know what you guys think, which one of the Magnetos you like better, even though in my opinion it's quite obvious. But yeah, I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.